Good afternoon. The Water and Land Committee is on its agenda for today, March 25th, 2024, in room 229. And today, our session starts at 1 p.m. And for all testifiers, we ask that you stand on your written testimony or limit your oral testimony to 1 minute as well. The content of this hearing can be found on the legislature's website. The live video stream and archive of the hearing is on the Senate's YouTube channel. We will be making a decision right after the hearings on all the measures before us. Let's proceed with SCR 73 and SR 61, and this is requesting the establishment of a stream maintenance working group within the Department of Land and Natural Resources. Ian Hirokawa, DLNR.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, Ian Hirokawa with DLNR. We'll stand on our testimony in opposition to the measure for the reasons as articulated in the testimony, and I'll be available for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, we thank you very much for your communication. We do have 3 support communications from Jacqueline Ambrose, Charles Ice, Regina Gregory. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to SCR 73? And members, this measure, the House has passed their measure as well, but I understand that the concerned DLNR did raise as well. This is not within their purview of managing, and so as we proceed, but the chair would just want to say that we will be deferring this matter. Okay, we'll move on to SCR 117 and SR 100. This is requesting DLNR to identify all appropriate sites at state parks at which a water bottle filling station could be installed. And we have, with regards to that, we have DLNR. Kurt Cottrell sends testimony with comments in support of this measure for the Friends of Hanauma Bay, Lisa Bishop, in support, Jacqueline Ambrose. Members, any questions on this measure? Okay, hearing none, let's proceed to SCR 119 and SR 102. And this is requesting the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development and Land Use Commission to develop an integrated land use plan. Okay. Land Use Commission, thank you.
Thank you, Chair and I, Vice Chair Elefante, and Senator Chang, members of the committee. We stand in our written testimony in support with some suggested changes, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, yes, and thank you for the amendments as well. Appreciate that. Department of Agriculture sends comments. Office of Planning and Sustainable Development in support, as well as Hawai'i Farm Bureau and Jacqueline Ambrose. Any questions, members, on SCR 119? Hearing none, let's move on to SCR 122 and SR 104, and this is requesting DLNR to work with NOAA and other experts to conduct a study on the population status of depleted coral reef herbivores around the island of Oahu and develop effective alternative policies for sustainability, replenishing those populations within a decade. DLNR. Okay. Charlie, Taylor? Okay, mahalo. Thank you.
Aloha, Chair Chang, Vice Chair Elefante, Senator Chang. We stand in support of our written testimony, and we will be available for any additional questions.
Okay, thank you very much. We see our friend Ted Boland here, Hawai'i Reef and Ocean Coalition. Aloha.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, Committee Member. Ted Boland on behalf of the Hawai'i Reef and Ocean Coalition. Herbivores are key to the survival of our coral reefs, and we are severely depleted on Oahu, so we need to do what we can to restore those populations. And I strongly urge the committee, therefore, to adopt this measure. Available for any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Ted. In support, we received communication from the Friends of Hanauma Bay, Lisa Bishop, Nature Conservancy, Ulalia Woodson. We did have Inga Gibson send us comments, and we do have support from Mark Hickson, Jacqueline Ambrose, Mary Donovan, Charlie Ice, Melissa Pevlicek, Uilani Naipo. Is there anyone else wishes to speak on SCR 122 and SR 104? Okay, members, any questions? Okay, hearing none, let's proceed then to SCR 176 and SR 152. This is urging DLNR and the Board of Land and Natural Resources to adopt certain procedures relating to the dam and appurtenance improvements or removal grant program to assist applicants in obtaining grants. Okay, DLNR, Kari Cheng. Okay.
Hello, Chair, Vice Chair, Member. DLR stands on its written testimony offering comments, and I'm available for questions.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Cardi. Okay, Hawaii Farm Bureau, Brian Miyamoto in support, as well as Jacqueline Ambrose in support. Anyone else wishes to speak to SCR 176? I believe, Cardi. Okay, your comments. Come on up, Cardi. I know that you've been up here many times with regards to all of the, anything to do with the dams, and as well, hold on, I'm trying to get to yours as well. Okay, here we go. Thank you. Okay, on the grant program, didn't we establish one several years ago with regards to grants for, how did that go?
Yes, so Act 134 was signed into law just last year, June. So that's the grant program you're probably referring to.
Yes,
So it's not even 1 year yet. So we're in the process of establishing the criteria, the application process, and so forth. We do have a Senate Bill 3153 that this committee passed out. It did cross over, but it didn't get a hearing. So that, although Act 134 is law, this Senate Bill 3153 is critical to the implementation of the grant program because it creates a special fund and it's an admin bill. So we just need the House to hear that bill and
but
go to
it's over,
conference.
right?
It's no, I think it's still it's moving on the House side. It just needs one more hearing to go into conference, but
Oh,
yeah,
okay, it's
yeah.
in fin then.
it's at fin,
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
yeah. So
okay, the Senate bill.
that's critical. Yes, the Senate Bill 3153.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, to implement this grant program effectively, we're gonna need that bill.
Oh,
We
okay,
can't do
all
it
right.
without that. That's why we stress that that our admin bill get passed out this year.
Okay, all right, okay. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you. Any questions for Cardi Chang on SCR 176? Thanks for bringing that up as well, where it's at least the bill is moving then, hopefully it gets heard. Okay. All right, okay, members, let's go into decision-making with regards to the resolutions before the Committee on Water and Land. Okay. Okay, the Committee on Water and Land is going into its decision-making on the resolutions before us on today's hearing notice with regards to SCR 73 and SR 61. As I mentioned earlier, the House Companion, I understand, has passed, and that's preferred as well. So we'll proceed with just deferring this measure. SCR 117 and SR 100. Chair's recommendation is to pass this measure as is. Any discussions? Hearing none, Vice Chair for the vote. Chair goes aye.
Chair's recommendation is to pass unamended SCR 117 and SR 100. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Chang.
Aye.
Senator McKelvey is excused. Senator Favela is excused. Madam Chair, recommendations adopted.
Okay, thank you. SCR 119 and SR 102, requesting Office of Planning and Land Use Commission to develop an integrated land use plan. Chair's recommendation is to pass with the amendments provided by the Land Use Commission, and we appreciate that. We'll be adopting that particular measure to make OPSD Sustainability Coordinator responsible for the plan, and we'll adopt the OPSD's amendments as well. And we'll also adopt the technical and non-substantive amendments. Any discussions? Hearing none, Vice Chair for the vote. Chair goes aye.
Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments SCR 119 and SR 102. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Chang.
Aye.
Senator McKelvey is excused. Senator Favela.
Aye.
Madam Chair, recommendations adopted.
Okay, thank you. SCR 122 and SR 104. Chair's recommendation on this measure is to pass with the amendments, just adopting technical, non-substantive amendments. Any discussions? Hearing none, Vice Chair for the vote. Chair goes aye.
Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments SCR 122 and SR 104 of the four members present on Waterland. Any no votes? Any votes with reservations? Hearing none, Madam Chair, recommendations adopted.
SCR 176 and SR 152. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, just adopting technical and non-substantive amendments. Any discussions? Hearing none, Vice Chair for the vote. Chair goes aye.
Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments SCR 176 and SR 52 of the four members present.
SR 152.
Sorry, SR 152, I stand corrected.
Yes.
Again, let me just reread it. SCR 176 and SR 152 with amendments of the four members present on Waterland. Any no votes? Any votes with reservations? Hearing none, Madam Chair, recommendations adopted.
Thank you. This concludes then the Committee on Water and Land agenda. Members, okay, thank you. The Committees on Water and Land and the Committee on Housing is on its notice of hearing for Monday at 1:30 p.m. in room 229. And just some housekeeping measures. We'd like to say that if we can limit the testifiers to 1 minute, or those with oral testimony to a minute. Otherwise, we may ask for some questions, and you can take your time in responding as well. The contact of this hearing can be found on the legislature's website. The live video stream and archive of the hearing is on the Senate's YouTube channel. Decision-making will occur after we hear from the testifiers. Members, let's proceed to SCR 55 and SR 44. This is urging the Hawaii Community Development Authority to establish a multi-agency working group to update the maps, tier tables, and inventories of state lands suitable and available for affordable housing development. HCDA Director Greg Nakamoto.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice
Good
Chair.
afternoon.
Good afternoon, members of the committee, members of the committees. I speak really with comments and suggestions. As a lot of when things were assigned and tasks were assigned to HCDA, more often than not, I'm there, I'm willing to help out. On this particular one, my comments are that this kind of task force and this kind of working group is probably not required and not necessary. It seems like the kind of growth that the state would like to see is in TOD areas. The focus and emphasis of the state seems to be growth in the TOD areas. And therefore, with the OPSD's report that was generated earlier this year and submitted, it seems like they have mapped out 4,000 acres already in TOD areas. And it would seem like, at least for now, that's sufficient. And so this kind of report is not necessary. So, thank
Any
you.
questions of Senator? Yes.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank
I did see the report that came out earlier this year, and it did not specifically focus on state-owned lands, is that right?
Just different lands, yes.
Okay, including privately owned lands.
Katia is also here, but she can clarify.
Okay. How much money would it take for your agency to update the 2016 Rental Task Force report?
I don't know how much money it would take, but I just think that it's not even necessary right now because those lands that have been identified, those 4,000 acres is a lot. If we look at, in addition to just identifying lands, there's also a need to probably update infrastructure, and that seems to be what's lacking in housing development. That's one of the major impediments.
The OPSD report also didn't focus on, so what I'm concerned about is there's a list of projects that OPSD compiled, which is fine, which is great. But as for the inventory that the state of Hawaii owns, there's been no assessment of identifying where future housing will go. And what I would love is for your agency to come up with a list of 5 parcels and say, these are the top 5 out of all of the state-owned parcels along the rail line that we can put 100,000 units on. And, I recognize that maybe resources will be needed for this, but now's your chance to ask for them.
As you know, Senator, we've been working on, the 99-year leasehold pilot project from last session. So we've been working on it. I think we're going to meet with you to kind of discuss the status of it. In connection with that project, I think we've already identified potential state-owned, non-ceded lands for that project. And I can certainly give you the top 5 that we've identified as potential. Those are state-owned lands that are non-ceded.
But for 100,000 units?
We can try to filter it out for 100,000 units. But I mean, I think the point is that we've already got the OPSD report, 4,000 acres. I think that identifies it. The real issue, I think, is whether or not there's infrastructure to support it. That's another look.
I appreciate your efforts. I do think that we need to release a public list of parcels. Without identifying where the units are going to go, I don't think the public has a vision for how the housing shortage will come to an end here in Hawaii.
And even if you identified all those, like I said, even if you identified all those state-owned lands, one, I think there's a question of infrastructure capacity. Two, how is the infrastructure gonna be funded and built? Who's gonna pay for it? And I think the third one is just a practical concern is, do we have the construction capacity to really build all those units?
I'm inclined to with the Waterland Chair's indulgence to pass this measure out because I understand that your agency may need resources. If you have a figure, we can note that in the committee report. But back in the 1970s, when the state was building 20,000 units a year, it wasn't like the infrastructure was all being financed by the state either. It's hard to finance infrastructure for 1,000 units. It's not hard to finance infrastructure for 20,000 units or 100,000 units.
Yeah, Senator, if I think it's not for me, it's not so much just the resources, dollars. Is it gonna take 2 staff positions? I think if I thought that this request was reasonable and necessary, resources, might not matter that much to me because I think it would be needed, but I just don't think this report and this task force is needed because I think the OPSD report kind of takes, does a lot to address those lands in the TOD areas.
I think it catalogs the projects that have been publicly announced, but I don't have confidence that those projects will end the housing shortage on the timelines that they're currently on. And if you do, then you should inform the committees now.
Well, like I said, I just don't think this further report is necessary. I think the OPSD report at least tries to map those acreages out and those parcels. And I think that's sufficient for now. So I just respectfully differ with you on that, Senator.
Thanks. That's all I have.
Okay, any further discussions on the measure before us? Okay, hearing none, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. We have Mary Alice from Office of Planning and Sustainable Development or member of staff.
Yes, hello, Katia Balaciano with OPSD on behalf of Mary Alice Evans. We are in support of the production of additional housing. We were the ones who had prepared the report in response to the resolution last year that was just discussed. We have been working towards the production of 66,000 units with our partners, county, state, private sector, in areas along the rail corridor here on Oahu and bus mobility hubs on the other islands. We have been receiving regularly about $1 million or $2 million towards the planning of actual projects to try to answer the question of how do you make these projects happen. I would respectfully suggest that there's more money put into infrastructure design or TOD project planning to move some of the projects that we identified in that report to move that ahead. But identifying additional lands may not be necessary at this point because we have quite a number of acres already identified and as close as possible to moving forward without that additional, infrastructure planning or design work. So we would be happy to participate in such a working group, but similar to HCDA, are not certain that additional study of the quantity of lands is necessary at this point in time.
Okay. Of the study that was done and the acreage that was identified, how many of those acres are already in movement? Did that include the TODs?
Yes, it did.
How many acres of the TODs?
We had identified 66,000 acres within the TOD area that were either available for TOD projects or underway at this point in time. Most of them being state and county lands, with some private lands as well included.
Was that only on Oahu?
No, it was statewide. That was statewide. And we had worked also with the YIMBY group at HHFDC on this report, as well as HCDA and HPHA were our partners in this.
All right, thank you. Any questions, members of OPA? Senator Elefante?
Thank you, Ms. Palaciano, and thank you for mentioning about the report that you have done as well and including that link in the testimony. The one question I had is OPSD also taking a look at state lands that may be leased to private entities coming up for expiration of leases?
We looked at the ownership of parcels, so we did not take it as far as the expiration of leases at this point in time.
Okay, that might be something, I mean, in the area that I represent, there are a few parcels around transit rail stations that might be coming up for renewal of leases that could have a potential to look into for some sort of mixed-use development, potentially housing and what, affordable housing and what this resolution attempts to accomplish, just for an analysis on that and what recommendation OPSD may or may not have. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you. Any further questions? Okay, hearing none, thank you so much. Okay, HHFDC, Dean Minakami sends comments. Keith Reagan sends communication in support, as well as Glenn Gagamida and Jacqueline Ambrose. Okay, is anyone else wishes to speak on SCR 55 and SR 44? Okay, hearing none, then we'll go into decision-making on this measure before the Committee on Water and Land and the Committee on Housing. Okay. Shall we add the committee report here with reference to?
Resources.
Okay. The resources pertaining to this or to considering, yeah, because this goes to HCDA.
Yeah.
Okay.
So resources for this
And infrastructure. Okay. Good. Okay. The committees are going to go into decision-making on the measure before us, SCR 55 and SR 44, to pass with amendments. We'll be adopting the technical and non-substantive amendments. We'd like to add onto the committee report to recognize that resources are needed for the agency, HCDA, as well as for infrastructure needs for the future. Okay, thank you. Any discussions? Committee on Water and Land, for the vote, chair goes aye.
Okay, with amendments, so.
Yes.
Okay, Chair's recommendations to pass with amendments SCR 55 and SR 44. Chair votes aye, Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Chang.
Aye.
Senator McKelvey is excused. Senator Favela.
Aye.
Madam Chair, recommendations adopted.
Thank you.
And same recommendation for the Committee on Housing for SCR 55 and SR 44 to pass with amendments.
Chair votes aye, Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Kino is excused. Senator Kanuha.
Aye.
Senator Awaz is excused. Chair, recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. This concludes then the joint hearing of the Committee on Water and Land and the Committee on Housing. Thank you, members.